to drag this
from
and then log in.
something.
If you guys are on the VPN, you can log in with me and mess with me if that would make you happy. Here's a web interface. It's beautiful. It's not outdated. It's not slow. Don't ever say it is. The first place is right here under the Manage tab. You'll see that Security and Users has this thing right here. And you can be like, okay, root, DSU, crackhead, and dumb. Interesting. So the description here could be anything you want. I could be like, you know, user with no privs. And that doesn't make them a user with no privs. So just be aware that that's arbitrarily changeable. Another thing you should quickly check is that you're not connected to a domain, because that means possibly that anyone added to the domain can auth to your box as well. So again, very handy for like a corporate environment, not so handy for us. So this is the pool of users that you can select from, that they're not. So let's say you have multiple ESXIs, which you don't, and you can't even configure that from the interface. So I don't know why this exists. Nothing really makes sense. But let's say I add a user and I'm like, Galen. And I make his password one bang. There we go. Now I can't log in with Galen on this box, right? You think back, okay, I added a user, right? I should be able to log in. So I'm opening the incognito tab to use a different session so I can log in again. Brilliant. So if I log in with Galen, it says, surprise, you can't do this. Wow, that takes so long. Okay. So we can't do it. That's because over here in the permissions, we didn't add them. So that's something to be aware of. Actions, permissions. We're going to need to add them right here. We can pick Galen. You might be wondering, like, when we added the actual user, like we didn't add any permissions, and this is why. So I'm going to do administrator. And then I'll be able to log in both through SSH and the web interface. Typical users you find on your box are the root user. You know, he's root. The VPX user, which is meant to use the web interface, so he doesn't have an SSH login shell. And then DCUI, which is presumably meant to use the direct console interface, which is that thing I was talking about before, where you just plug straight into the box. Authentication part 1, security and users. I already talked about this. Yeah. And then this is where you assign permissions in the permissions tab. So the roles that I glossed over, admin, you're an administrator. No cryptography admin is an admin, but they can't do anything involving cryptographical operations, which is essentially worthless. No one cares. Read only means they can't actually use the VMs. So you might be thinking like, okay, that's really cool, because then the red team can only mess with the VMs and not the settings or the ESXI. But no, it's actually just worthless because they can't use VMs either. And no access is the default. If you're poking around, you might see this little thing right here, which says enter lockdown mode, which is, again, unfortunately worthless, because unless you have physical access to it or it's connected to a vSphere, this doesn't do anything. Because it'll kick you out. So I guess it does do something in that you can no longer use your box. It'll actually refuse to do it. Failed. Thanks. So let's say that, you know, I'm a lead red team hacker, and I am logged into this web interface. So again, I'm going to open a private window and log in as Galen. Oh no, my non-tiling window manager. So as soon as this loads so fast, and I log in with Galen, then I'm going to try to kick myself out. And there's really no way to do that. So I don't know why I'm pretending like there is. What? Okay, be like that. I probably typed the password wrong when I was putting it in. In any case, I'm going to log in as root then and try to kick myself out, because that's more realistic. Okay, so we're both root. Let's say this left side is the red teamer and this side's me. If this is your first time messing with an ESXi, you're probably like, okay, I'll go to settings. and then I'll expire the web session, right? That's a logical thing to think, and be like, oh, application timeout 15 minutes. So as long as the red team like takes a snack break or something, you might be able to lock them out. But that's not a real strategy. That's not valid. So we're gonna have to go to the command line. Yay! So I'm gonna SSH to root at the IP 10.20.10.3. My super secret password. Okay. Finally, I type a password correctly. And here I'm SSH'd in. So again, there's no way to expire the session from the command line. What we have is we have to restart all the services on the box. And then that'll kick us both out. And hopefully I changed the password by then, and they didn't change it back or add any persistence mechanism or users. So as you can see, the ESXI wasn't really designed with this environment in mind. Yeah, you can ignore that. So more on SSH, all you have to do is, like I showed you, just SSH to the IP. ESXI itself is based on Debian, so you're going to find a lot of system utilities that you'll find on Debian. But they've messed it up real bad. If you do uname A, uname, you'll see that it's no longer any real kernel. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But if you try to do password and like cancel it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, what is this? Python. Why is password Python? And oh. Oh, okay, yeah. Here's another quirk. You get like stuck in Python, and then your shell dies if you cancel that. So be careful. Don't cancel password because it'll get angry. Plenty more quirks. So if we do this, we can see exactly what password actually is, and it's a link to that, which is a Python program. So if you see this, you might be like, okay, obviously red team replaced my passwords binary with a script, but this is legit. This is default. And with that in mind, how can we kill other SSH sessions? The best way I found is you just pgrep SSH, and then you see like what session you are, and then if that looks like close-ish enough, then it's probably okay because that's just you. Obviously, if there's only one in your SSH chain, then it's you. But if there are two, that's how you can tell the difference. You can also try PSJ, but unlike the real PS, this is really hard to look through because I don't know which. Okay, there I am. So I spawned off BusyBox. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, by the way, you can just shout them out because we don't have questions up right now. So finally getting to that first step of securing things, we're going to go in here, remove the bad users. I was going to the wrong place. What? Okay, so after you restart services, it'll look like the web interface still works, but nothing actually works.
So kind of on the same tangent, I have a question, Shane.
Yeah, what's up?
You were saying earlier that some of the users are dumb and worthless. Does that mean you should get rid of them?
Oh, the roles are dumb and worthless, some of them. So if there's a user with that role, then yeah, you can probably nuke them. But you should be careful to not remove anything you need, like VPX user or DCUI, or root, obviously. But thanks for the question. Yeah, I think what Michael was talking about was some of these roles don't really do anything. So if you want to manage them finally, then that's good. All right, so I'm going to remove these users, and then I'm going to use my powers of security by obscurity to edit this user into, to add a new user. So the red team can't guess it. And then in order for them to actually be logged in, so you see after I add a user, if I go to the shell, you'll see that they are actually a login user. But if I try to log in with them, PAM, their PAM module will deny me because I'm not like thrown onto the box with permissions. So that's fun. Okay, so now we've changed everyone's passwords, presumably. All you have to do to change passwords is add a user and then update the password right here. Keep in mind, if you type something that's too lame, it might reject it. Then we remove users, make sure there are no evil roles. Like if I made a role red team and then slapped it on a user, that's probably bad. And then once we remove those, we can go in our box and fine tune the permissions and roles they were given. Gosh, it takes so long. So we see these two users, which were not actually in the users list, but they're built in, and you can't change them. So I could obviously go over here and just delete them, and that's what I do with NSF user normally. Wow, I just go like bump because I don't like NSF nobody. Anonymous NFS user, no like you. And you could totally do that, but you shouldn't because it'll probably break things. Right. So I actually forgot to add my low permission user. So I'm gonna add LOL and I'm gonna make admin. And you could go through and like click the things they really needed, but I'm not going to. Okay. And then here's where we do the services restart thing to kick out anyone that was logged in. And that's it. Hopefully they no longer have any shells on the box. Okay. Now, obviously, maybe they had planted some persistence and you want to be able to see what they're doing. So there's a few interesting and important log files. Shell.log just has all the commands you executed, which is pretty neat. Like if I do, you see, I typed it and then it was put in before I read it. So a strat that I like is you can actually read log. You can actually read files in the background, so you can still type, and it'll just kind of interrupt your stream. So if I type ls, it's like ls. So it might look that that's like where I normally type, but it's not affecting it. So I can type normal commands. It's just output, it's not input. So once you get used to that, it's very helpful because you can see a lot of data, what's happening in your system on the same pane you're typing in commands. So we're going to do that again for Autholog, which shows when people log into SSH and stuff. Like you see, there's PAM Unix right here, says no fruit. That's when I logged in. And then something that's specific to this system, much like shell.log, is I can watch hostd.log, which manages a lot of authentication and other black magic stuff, and see when people log in. So that will get very spammy, but that tells me exactly when anyone logs into the web interface or to the API. Okay, so now step 3 or 4 or something is we want to set up a firewall. Firewalls are cool. Firewalls are good. We like firewalls. So as you can see, it's very verbose. See, I typed it wrong. I only had to type one command. So when I run this, ignore the log output spam. This is user root logged in py-vmommy. That's what ESXI does in the backend, is it talks to the web API. So ignore that. Going to be a lot of spam. Good to get used to it. So as we see right here, default action is drop, so default deny. It is enabled and it is loaded, so that's good. I don't want to type ESXI network firewall each time, so I'm going to assign it to a variable. I'm going to say f, and now I could do f. Wow, I typed it wrong. ESX. Now when I type f, it's like, okay, what do you want to do? So now I can append that and really succeed like I want to. So if I try to load it and it's already loaded, it'll say busy. If I try to enable it, it's like, okay, already enabled. So if you do this and you see that these things aren't what they should be, these are default, then you should change them. So you might expect firewall to be normal. Unfortunately, it is not. For each service, it has a rule set, and then you can enable and disable those, or only allow a specific IP. So that's kind of confusing, but let's say I had SSH. I can have SSH enabled or disabled. If it's disabled, then it's the default policy. Or I can have it enabled and then allow IPs or not. If I have it enabled and allow IPs, then only some IPs can access SSH. If I have it enabled and I do not allow some IPs, then no one can access it. This is a part to be really careful, especially if you're SSHing in and not using the web interface. You could easily lock yourself out and you have to revert or repent or commit seppuku or something. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna try to say, first we're gonna see what my IP is inside the network. It's 10.31.04, and then we're gonna try to whitelist that through SSH. So I'm gonna set a false for SSH server. And then so if I just ran that, I would just lock myself out. So this is an and. And then I'm going to say, remember the F is replacing ESXI CLI network firewall. And then I'm going to say allow to the allowed IP list my IP. Okay, now we want to double check that, because if I screw this up, then I guess we're not using SSH anymore. We'd have to change it from the web interface. Set a false for SSH server, we'll set allowed IP add SSH server my IP. Oh, okay, well it failed. Because I forgot to do real set. Oh, okay, we're still in, we're good. So now only me can access, only I can access this from the network. So no one else can SSH in, which is real nice. So some status commands, if I want to do network, wow, I should have just replaced with $F on the slides. If I do that command, rule set list, I can see which ones are enabled. If you wanted to make a loop and go through and enable all the ones that were disabled, you could totally do that. If I want to see exactly which IPs were allowed, we can see that for SSH server, my IP is allowed and all other ones have everything. And if you want to see what the actual real firewall rules are, you can do this normal one. So we check here for SSH server, inbound 22. That makes sense. Okay, so we're almost done. We locked out users, we tightened up auth, set up a firewall, and have logs outputting to our terminal. Now we're going to do some nice quality of life things, and we're just going to take a snapshot of every image. So this is what this does. For each VM, right, so if we run this command, we'll get all VM IDs, and then this tail right here in the cut is giving me just the IDs. So if you want to wait while I type that command, real nice. So vim command, VM service, get all VMs. So we're only interested in this. So the tail command knocks off the first line right here that we don't care about, and then cut takes the first field. No, I didn't type this yet. All right, bear with me while I type this for loop so you can see it in action. Because, real hackers don't copy and paste. So cut on a delimiter of a space, the first field. Vim command, VM service, snapshot.create. It's really easy to get messed up because, the shell log output, I'm trying to type here. Can you wait? And then this is the name right here, and then this is the description. We're not very creative, so we're going to do initial for both. And then 0, we don't want to record the memory. We could take the memory and then do a live snapshot, but we're not going to because it takes longer. And then I do done. And you can see it says create snapshot here in between the host D logs, which say I'm logging in. Now every box on this ESXI should have a snapshot. We can check that on the web interface. See here are VMs. If I go here, be like action, snapshots, we see that we can restore from snapshot. Neat. And there it is, initial. Fantastic. So that's that. You should now be prepared to probably, maybe, not ruin your team's experience. And that's it. Thanks for coming. Does anyone have questions, concerns, hate mail? All right, excellent. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Thank you.
No problem.